Hi everyone, welcome to the Healthy Debate. I'm Leemore and I'm going to be your host for today. In this show, we like to talk and debate about all kinds of health issues. Today, we're going to talk about the maternity restrictions in Ireland, especially about the demonstrations that happened today. And I have fantastic three people that we're going to chat to. So our first guest that we're going to have is Liz Halliday. She's one of the private midwives. Hi, Liz. Welcome.
Hi, Leemore. It's lovely to see you today.
Yeah. So would you like to tell us what exactly is the private midwives? What do you guys do?
Private Midwives is a private company of midwives. That's what it says on the tin, really. So we're non-HSE related, but we do find that we work very well with the HSE, and we provide private maternity care for families in their own home. That can be antenatal care, postnatal care, birth support. But the main crux of our business would be home birth.
Brilliant.
For families across Ireland.
Brilliant. Really. Brilliant. Thank you, Liz. And our second guest today will be Dave Saunders from Lads to Dads. Hi, Dave.
Hello, Leemore. How are you?
I'm good. Welcome. So would you like to tell us a tiny bit about what's from Lads to Dads? That's your baby.
Yeah, I mean, look, Lads to Dads is an organisation that I set up in 2019. Really, it's a perinatal support service for fathers. It was born primarily out of my journey as a teenage parent and the struggles that I went through in that space. And you know, I wanted to put something together to try and support dads through that whole process a lot better than was in place when I went through it many years ago. So it's a perinatal support that, you know, has access to midwives, has sort of opens up additional community supports for dads that to link them into the likes of baby massage, the likes of child development courses, and it's a full, what I would call a wraparound service for dads.
Fantastic.
That's ever changing, and it's very exciting to be part of it.
Fantastic. Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. And our last guest today is Orla O'Connor. She's the director of the NWCI. Hi, Orla. Welcome.
Hi, Leemore. Really good to be here.
Yeah.
Really good to be here. And it's really good that we're discussing such an important issue for women.
Yeah. Can't wait. So what's the NWCI? Can you let us know?
Yeah, so the National Women's Council, we're a feminist organisation working and campaigning for women's rights and equality, and we're Ireland's leading membership organisation. So there's 190 member groups throughout the island of Ireland,
Wow.
Women's organisations and organisations working for women's equality, and it's really diverse. So there's locally community-based women's groups, frontline services, for example, on violence against women, childcare organisations, and many organisations who are really concerned about women's health. So really diverse and a brilliant organisation to be a part of.
Brilliant. I'm so happy that the three of you are here with me today. So I'm just going to bring us all to today's topic, okay? So today was actually the first protest that happened in Ireland since a bit of restrictions were taken off or made easy, okay? The AIMS Ireland, which is the Association to Improve Maternity Services in Ireland, were one of the groups that actually created the demonstrations today. As I understand, there's going to be demonstrations all over the week. There's going to be ones tomorrow, on Thursday, and on Sunday, and other groups are joining. I think the other group is called the Irish Birth Movement also. I know that AIMS, it was very important for them to uphold all the rules, and most people were wearing masks and they kept their distance, and they didn't have many people there. It was really a very important demonstration, quiet and poignant. We got loads of media coverage for it. And it's kind of weird how this media coverage, I think, was very strong. So why do you think that is? Dave, why do you think that this day today got such a good media coverage, for example?
I think it's a hugely important topic. Yeah, I mean, it's been on the radar there for a long time, and people have been banging the drum and shouting about why people are being excluded and why partners aren't allowed in, and why, you know, couples aren't allowed to experience the childbirth process the way it should be, and so I mean, it's a hugely hot topic that is, you know, having massive impacts across so many relationships, and what's supposed to be you know, a hugely magical time in people's lives. It's just I'm glad that it's getting so much attention, because it deserves it, and rightly so. I mean, you know, this has to change.
Yeah. And Liz, in the last 14 months, obviously, me as a doula and yourself as a midwife, we've seen a lot of things happening in the hospitals and in the home birth. Would you like to share what's your view of it? I understand. Is it correct to say that there's a bit more home births happening in the last year, or that's not true?
I can only speak for private midwives, although I believe the HSE home birth service has also been inundated. Our inquiries have been up by over 50% over the last 14 months. Now, obviously, each midwife can only safely take on a certain amount of families, and we're working at capacity, so our bookings have gone up by about 20 to 30% depending on the area. So we have been really busy over the last 14 months.
And why do you think that is? Why do you think more people are looking into home birth then?
I think people are looking into home birth mainly because of the restrictions and fear of being on their own in the hospital from a woman's point of view, and from a partner's point of view. Often that is a male point of view, but sometimes not. The idea of literally leaving their heavily pregnant and labouring partner in the hospital and just sitting outside in the car park hoping that they're okay, and that there's been a lot of concern about that, and I think that has driven people to look into other options, even just for antenatal and postnatal care as well, because the difficulties of going in for antenatal appointments wearing masks, being in very close confines with other people has been frightening.
And on your own.
And from a postnatal point of view, a lot of women are being discharged very early from hospital with very little postnatal support. I think what's been really poignant for me is sometimes I'm starting care with somebody at like 34, 36 weeks, and I have had quite a few partners burst into tears because it's been the first time that they've heard their baby's heartbeat. And that's been really poignant for me.
Okay, thank you. Orla, I'll go to you. Why do you think today was such a big day?
Well, I think because, women have been campaigning for months on this issue, and contacting the Women's Council about, the real horrendous experience that they've been having. Women, who have been pregnant in COVID have had a horrendous experience, and in often case a very traumatic experience. Not having your partner there through scans, through labour, is really traumatic. And I think, it was one of the really clear messages that, over 60,000 people signed a letter that was coordinated by Uplift and the National Women's Council.
Yeah.
And one of the key messages on this was that this is, its partners are not visitors. This is not a luxury. This is essential. It's essential in terms of the support for a woman, a person who is pregnant. And it was being seen as if it was some sort of added extra, and it's not. It's so key to the experience of pregnancy, and of labour and of giving birth. So I think what we're seeing, both in terms of the letter, the media attention, the protests, is that, women are just sick of it, and dads and partners, and so there was a real point of just saying we've had enough, we've been shouting about this enough. And I think as well there's a huge frustration with what has gone on both at a political level and I think within the HSE and the Department of Health, because there's been utter confusion, never a clear message. Announcement someday that the restrictions are lifted. We heard Tony Hoolan, the CMO, saying there's no need for restrictions, and yet the experience of women is still having restrictions.
Yeah.
And so I think there's a real piece about the seriousness with which this issue was taken, and it was never taken with the seriousness that it should have been taken, or that showed an understanding on the impact of women, their partners, their families, and so you're seeing a real level of anger from women, frustration, and we've absolutely had enough. And it needs to
what's
change.
The other word that I would use? Pain. There is a lot of pain and a lot of suffering that shouldn't be there. And actually, on that note, is it possible for us to see one of the interviews that we did today? Take a look at that for a second.
So my name is Jennifer Woods, and I'm a doula, and I was a doula for my daughter Shannon Woods, who had a baby 14 months ago, and just literally about 2 days before the first lockdown. So we felt we were very lucky that I was after being present with her, and that she was after having a beautiful birth, absolutely nothing. She does retain her placenta, and she had to go into theatre to have it removed, which she had previously done on the first little fella. So when she came out of the theatre and went back to the ward, we ended up going on the early release programme, so she got to go home the very next day. Her first pregnancy had been horrendous, and she had lost over 2 litres of blood, and she had to have a blood transfusion, and she just was so ill after him. And we didn't really go anywhere about that. We just went to our local GP and we just got her better ourselves. But it took her a full year to get over that. It actually took her going to the reflections unit here in the Coombe, who, by the way, didn't really help her at all, for her to have another baby, because she was adamant that was horrendous what had happened to her. So bearing all that in mind, we had asked for her to maybe go to a high-risk clinic just to have a chat with somebody to put more better things in place for the second birth. So we did ask on several occasions about a section, but we were told that no, her problems were at the end of her pregnancy, and it was literally just to have problems with her placenta. So they would bring her into theatre and they would fix that. We've since learned, when she came home, from having the little fella, she evacuated her bowels within the 3rd day of being at home. And when her midwife came out to see her, she did say to her that this had happened, and she just put that down to that Shannon was after probably having some diarrhea due to the fact that she was on antibiotics, lactose, and I can't really remember the other things she was on, but they just put it down to that. So Shannon was kind of saying, I don't really feel this is right, but look, I can't really do anything if that's what they're saying they are doing. Then she started to express gas from her vagina, and she was due her 6-week checkup, and the explosions hadn't happened since then, so she just put it down to that was the correct story. But when she went to see the GP, she spoke about the gases coming out of her, and they said no, that they would keep an eye on it, that it wouldn't be right, that it can happen for a little bit. So when she left the GPs, within about 2-3 weeks, she had another evacuation of her bowels, and that has continued ever since. That her whole daily life is just literally having bowel explosions while walking in work, while she has to try and she has no sensation, no feeling. She didn't know what was wrong with her. She attended back into the Coombe here from our GP sending a letter to say that they wanted her to be looked at, and she arrived here just before Christmas. And first of all, her appointments were cancelled and everything was COVID. So we asked to go private, and we were told no, that she'd be better off to just wait. So she got an appointment on the 9th of December, and we went in to see the professor inside, and she had to go in alone because of the way things are. And she was left there for about 5 to 6 hours, and then she was examined, and she was told the devastating news that they felt that she had lost her sphincter muscle. We didn't really fully understand what that meant at the time, and that they would fix it. They assured her they would fix it, but she'd be in a colostomy. And that was the news. She was delivered at 27 at the time, years of age, and she came back, and we'll go off and have a good Christmas, and we'll have a chat with you after. So they ended up then bringing her in for exploratory surgery to find out exactly what type of procedure they were going to do to fix her. And although we weren't happy with her having to have 3 surgeries, because we presumed she would have that surgery, then the one to fix her, and then the one to reverse the colostomy, we were like getting her through that, and we were saying, look, it'll be fine, we'll manage it. But then to go in and find out at your bedside on your own yet again, where I had to at 6 o'clock in the morning leave her at the door and say goodbye to her, and she was told that her injury was catastrophic, that she had destroyed her inner and outer sphincter muscle, that they couldn't explain how it had happened, and that they would find somebody to fix her, but it wouldn't be him because they couldn't fix it, and she would need to see a colorectal surgeon. From that then we ended up finding our own colorectal surgeon, because she works in St James's, and he was very good. But unfortunately, he couldn't particularly help this type of injury either. So he ended up sending her to a lady called Dr. Anne Hanley, who, in fairness to her, is fantastic, and has told Shannon that her injury is a 4th-degree tear, which is after taking over 14 months to diagnose for her to get a diagnosis. Her prognosis is not very good. There is no operation that will fix her. And the solution at the moment is for her to do pelvic physiotherapy, where they have given her like an irrigation kit, like a douche, that she has to stick up her back passage every evening and evacuate her bowels so that she doesn't have constant seepage, which she still does have, and then try and get back. She hasn't had 1 day off work since she went back from her maternity, because there is no reason why she should have any days off work, because nobody again has diagnosed her. So now that she's being diagnosed and can't be fixed, there will be no days off work, because she just has to learn to live with this. Her mental health wouldn't be very good, but she put on a very good, front. And her point of anger at the moment is that, firstly, there's no colorectal surgeon in Ireland that will, from my knowledge, that will help you, bar 3, I think, in Dublin, and they're all women. And I just find it horrendous that there possibly is women sitting at home with all this happening to them, thinking that it is normal. The story from the Massic Foundation and the stories that are on lots of trauma, birth traumas, it's just horrendous.
And how did it affect the whole family?
Well, we're all devastated because she's so young, and we don't know what she's going through personally. And, her husband, he didn't take it too well, and their marriage went a little bit rocky, and I understand, because he just thought it was just something that, they'll fix it, it'll be fine, and, you know, trust in the medical. And he would say to her things like, but if they say they can fix it, they can fix it. Where we were saying, well, just because they're doctors doesn't mean they're gods, like, you know, and we need to find, I'm also a firm believer that I find out the doctor I'm going to and, you know, who they are. She always said, if I go to a doctor that hasn't killed anybody, I'll stay with the doctor till I get to know them. And she said, so her putting her trust in Anne Hanley has, I don't know if it's still there, but she's the only woman that gave her some answers. They may not be great answers, but they gave her some answers. Today, now this afternoon, she has a Zoom call with a company in England that are going to explain to her how to use her machine, and they can only really support her for about a year, apparently. But we don't know if this is a lifetime sentence.
And how did it affect, is it her twin sister?
Her twin sister now has just found out that she's pregnant. She's 11 weeks pregnant, and she just keeps on saying to me, well, I just want to have my backside at the end of this. And she is picking.
Is that her first?
It's her first, and with, you know, history of our family, the 12 weeks are kind of really, you know, rocky. And the fact that she's come out to here today and her job and everything, we'll probably know this evening, is, you know, she just wants her sister's story to be told. And she said to me, the fact that I now have to go in to the hospital next week for a very, you know, special thing between myself and my husband, she said, and I'm on my own while yous are all sitting outside. Then Shannon was so lucky to have you as her doula in with her. Will I have that? I can only say, look, I reassure you, and I hope to good God that by Christmas, when you're due, by December, the start of December, I will be there with you and Paddy will be there with you. But I can't guarantee that.
So guys, tough video, huh? Liz, I'll go to you, darling. What do you think? Like, there's so many different difficulties of that story. What do you think about it?
I mean, first of all, I'm absolutely devastated for that woman. Fourth degree tears do happen. And we know that when there is a third or a fourth degree tear, there is a risk of fecal incontinence, but obviously they should be picked up and repaired properly at the time. I don't know the clinical notes. I wasn't in the room, so I don't feel I can really comment on that. I think what's really important here is that even when an issue was picked up there, the appointment being put back,
exactly.
and then just no answer.
And then being told all of that at the age of 27, that you have no sphincter that's actually working, and you have to have a colostomy bag forever, on your own, because you're not allowed to have somebody with you to hold you, to hear that devastating news. I really think it's shocking, really. And I think something needs to be done. And I think our lovely Minister of Health should take a decision and do a complete risk assessment, which I'm not sure was done to any of the other things that are happening. The risk assessment that was done around COVID, right? What about all the other health issues that are happening because of the restriction? Dave, do you have any stories, or you saw that I was asking her how is the family? How did it affect the family? And that's where you come in, right? Because you see that side. Can you imagine that lad who's 28, who has two beautiful small babies, and you know, their lives are gone as a couple, you know?
Yeah, you know, I mean, it's heartbreaking. It's terrible to hear. I mean, look, we run two groups. We run a group for dads to be, and we run a group for dads who are dads, and a lot of that is peer-to-peer and support. And like the fear and anxiety in the dads to be group, and the way it's changed, and the mixed messages, and it opened up temporarily and then it's closed again. But like some of the words that the dad would, you know, the big concerns about bonding, disappointment, nervous, guilt, disconnected. And I asked some of the dads that I work with just to kind of send me a little synopsis, if they didn't mind, of their stories. And I have some of them here that I'll just read out for you, if that's okay.
That's brilliant.
And the things that they're telling us. So one of the dads in particular just said to me, look, he'd summarise his experience by standard appointments not allowed to attend any appointments, any scans, attend due to the pandemic, a lack of knowledge, missed an opportunity to meet other parents and share the experience to build into becoming a parent. Didn't attend any online classes. Pre-labour, were not allowed to support my partner at the pre-labour ward. Unexpected issues. In my case, there was an unexpected at our last appointment. The consultants were not happy with the baby's development, but the communication was very poor. I was still not allowed to meet them in person and talk about hours and restrictions to only a few hours per day, causing massive queues and desperate, the likes of searching for. That's one of the, I'm one of the dads who just become park your car, bring something.
Dave, we're having some kind of a problem.
For example,
Dave, we're having some kind of a problem with your video. We're gonna try and fix it. Okay, so I'll move to Orla for a second then. Orla, what did you think of what we saw?
Yeah, I mean, clearly, you know, really, God, what a horrendous experience. And unfortunately with the sound, I only caught some of the story, but certainly of the piece that I did, I thought, wow, it's just so, you know, so horrendous. And as you said, you know, this is lifelong impact. And I, you know, I mean, there's a few different pieces in this. You know, we're talking right now in terms of the impact of the restrictions, and clearly, you know, every pregnancy is unique for a woman, and the experience is unique, and people will want and need different supports throughout that. And so I think there's an important sort of message in that. And what women have been very clearly saying is just how important supports are, and they're even more important when things don't go as you expect them or as you would like them. And I think that hasn't been really, you know, fully understood or recognised in terms of those in the leadership, in terms of, you know, Department of Health, and because of course everyone recognised the need in terms of public health and safety of the medical professionals, the staff in the hospitals, and also of everyone who was in hospitals. But that also needed to be balanced with how important having somebody with you is in terms of all of the different experiences that might happen, but particularly when things don't go right. I also think that there's another bit in this, and the National Women's Council, when the National Maternity Strategy was being drawn up, was involved in a lot of the consultation processes. And you know, very clearly, women spoke about needing, you know, women-centred health services, health services that give and enable women to make choices for themselves. And I think, you know, when we talk about coming out of COVID, we don't want to go back to the way things were. We want a different experience for women in the health service, and that goes in relation to maternity, but also into many other different areas where we really feel that women's needs, women's health needs, and looking at health in a much more holistic way. So looking at mental and physical health together needs to be taken into account.
Okay, thank you. Can we go back to Dave? Can we try? Dave, can you hear us now?
Sorry about that.
It's
yes,
okay.
I can. Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
The joys of technology.
Yeah, it would have been much better to have you all here. So what was there was one story that you read for us. Is there another one there?
So there's another one there, and look, there's another piece. There's a few little snippets that Dad sent me as well, and one of them is like I met my partner 9 hours after she went into labour. I had no idea what to say or what to do. I was playing catch up. I felt I wasn't part of the process, and it's affected my bond, and I feel so guilty. Another one was, it brings into question my ability as a parent on such a big, important, and we've been building for this for so long. I'm allowed to carry the bags and leave them at reception and then go to my car for the next while and wait to be on call, treated like we're not part of the process, and are really affecting my mental health.
Of course.
And then there's another one that just says, look, fathers are always getting a hard time for not being involved or not caring enough, or not doing enough classes or antenatal classes. But what does this message send out? That we're not important in the birth at all, or the build-up, that we only need to be there for the last 20 minutes. And that one sticks with me quite poignantly, because like one of the things that comes up again and again with fathers is they want to be there as a support, they want to be part of the process. And of course, as was touched on earlier, it's bad enough if everything goes well, but if the news doesn't go well and you're not getting good news, you haven't got that support, which is vitally important to have around you. And like dads having to sit in cars for hours and hours. Some of the dads were even telling me that their cars got clamped when they were gone in to see their child being born, or when they went to go to get something to eat, they come back and their cars clamped. I mean, it's just it's heartbreaking to listen to people. Really,
I have to say, I have to share with you, you know, I'm a doula, and during this year I was very lucky to be a part of 4 births as a partner. So I could really see what partners are going through, because we're not allowed in the hospitals as doulas, as a third party, you know. And one of my clients, which I told that story before, but it stuck with me. She went into induction, and that's exactly it, Orla, like you said. If they're going in for some kind of a procedure, that's not necessarily straightforward, and it can take time. And she went in at 8 a.m. I was allowed to come in and be with her at 10:45 at night. Most of the day she was on the phone screaming to me, in labor, in early stages of labor, and I was supposed to help her through the phone. By the time I got to her, I was exactly like that dad, only I'm not in love with that woman, you know. I was there because it was my privilege to be there. But like, to be there and you're the lover, and you know, that baby is yours. It is, I really think myself, it is criminal what we're doing to these women. It is criminal. Okay, and today at the demonstrations, actually outside the National Maternity Hospitals, we had 2 women that came to the protest. One said, "Thank you so much for being here today," with her eyes. "I just had a miscarriage and I was there on my own. I couldn't have anybody with me." One. And the other person said, "Thank you so much for being here today. I'm just out of the fertility clinic and my partner is not allowed to be with me." From a fertility clinic. Can you imagine, talking about the psychological difficulty there? You know, I'm sure that partners have a huge difficulty if you're going through fertility treatments, all right? And you cannot be there at that moment when you're creating the baby together. You know, it is mind-boggling. I will take you to see a few more of the people that we saw today in the demonstration. I think we're starting, maybe Krisha is there, the chairperson of AIMS, and a few other of the people that were there outside the CUM today. Take a look.
So I'm Krisha Lynch. I'm here from the Association for the Improvements in the Maternity Services. And we have organised a nationwide protest against the current maternity restrictions, because the current maternity restrictions do not have any risk assessment associated with them at the moment. They've gone on for a huge length of time, the full 15 months. And at this point in time, even the Chief Medical Officer is telling us that there is no public health issue for them to continue. And so we're calling on the Minister of Health, the HSE, and the heads of the hospital groups to come together and to plan a roadmap out of this for pregnant people, their families, their babies and their partners.
Yeah, my name is Katie Boyle and I am going in for my dating scan today. It's my first scan, so I'm absolutely petrified. I'm going in without my partner And yeah, it's just very nervous. It's a very nervous time for me, and I just would need support of the person that's closest to you. So that's the thing that's very difficult, and knowing that the future is going to be like that unless it changes, and it needs to change. It's my first pregnancy, so I don't know what to expect. So yeah, I just think, and for all the women who have to go through it alone, it's horrendous in my opinion. So I'm delighted to see so many women and men out here today with their babies, just hoping that they're going to change this soon, very soon. Unfortunately, it's too late for the people who've gone through it, but hoping for my own pregnancy now that my partner John gets to be with me.
Peter McCormick's my name. It's very important that fathers are at the births of their children if they want to be. My own wife went into an emergency section, and she was so delighted to have me there through the birth, and it worked. You know, she was struggling, and they handed me the baby, and they said wash that bed while they looked after my wife. And my dad used to say, you know, we used to stay down in a pub down the road from the Hollis Street and wait for the phone call to come up to say that the baby had been born and come up and see it. And he said that was the way it was done in the 50s and 60s. And now it's very important that couples are together. It's very, very important. Because the husband bonds with the child or the partner straight away, just like the mother does. So it's essential.
My name is Bernadette Phelan. This is Eve Phelan. She's 6 months old. And basically I went through the whole process of the pregnancy and a good portion of the labour by myself without my husband, Eve's father, because of the restrictions. So I'm here today, you know, to raise awareness of how difficult that was, you know, on myself and on all the mums. I'm a first-time mum, so the whole experience was quite daunting for me. And not having the support of my partner through the process was very difficult. I feel that it would have been a lot easier and enjoyable if I had him by my side during the pregnancy appointments and during the entire labour.
My name is Gosia Stack, and I'm a maternity care researcher. And I'm here because I think that maternity services in Ireland have been neglected for a long time. And for me, the restrictions on maternity care and how this is dealt with is just another example how women's needs and women, don't really matter when it comes to deciding, how services are provided. And I'm hoping that maybe this issue of restrictions on maternity care, because it's really, humane issue that everybody will probably connect and understand across the board, because we had loads of scandals and issues with maternity services, and somehow we still don't see, the problem and the change that's needed. We have maternity strategy that hasn't been implemented, that the funding has been cut. We were supposed to have midwifery-led units, which haven't been built. So I'm just thinking that this is really a moment when we see how dreadful women are being treated by our health services.
Hi Stephen, I am Emer and I am a mum of 4. I'm also a doula. So I've been watching very closely over the last 15 months everything that's been going on with regards to the maternity restrictions in Ireland. I've been following very closely obviously all of the stories. We've been just hearing a lot of stories coming in through all the different channels every day. From women and couples, that are having to birth alone, that are having to go to appointments and get bad news alone, that are, just traumatized and full of anxiety, because everything is just so very confusing and very unclear at the moment. There's no transparency with why these restrictions are still in place for partners. The Chief Medical Officer, Dr. Tony Houlihan, said on RTE last night that there's no good reason why these restrictions are still in place now, and so we just need an answer for that now. People need reassurance, and they need some kind of a plan going forward, because maternity was just left out of all of the roadmap over the last 15 months. It was never a priority, and so we just want answers now. We want answers for all of the people who are pregnant in Ireland, who are going to be giving birth in Ireland, who have new babies, and for all of those people in the last year who unfortunately have had to do this alone. We're standing here for them today.
Yeah, what you guys couldn't see, so if you move a bit back and you see all the women, there were a few men standing with us, and the men that actually joined us were dads coming from the car park that are sitting in the cars waiting to hear anything. I'm telling you, it was such a tough day. I feel so happy that we were there and our voices were heard. But yeah, what's next? The other thing that I wanted to say to you is that in some of the clips you could hear the beeping of the cars. So we haven't moved back into the country I'm from. It's not Israel or anything. It's just people beeping for like hooray for all the stuff that we were holding. Basically, the stuff that was said is end maternity services restrictions now. End it now. Now we understand it might need to take time to bring back and roll back and do, but like, are you prepared for the next time? Is there anything, any kind of risk assessment being done of if there'll need to be more restrictions in the future done? Like, Orla, do you know of anything like that? Or Liz, do you know of anything like that being planned for the future? So let's say they open everything up, and then towards the winter, they'll have to close it back again. I think a partner should not be out away from his partner. Like, that's it. There's no two ways about it. They're breathing the same germs. They're breathing the same viruses. Why are they not being allowed in? People today are getting their nails done, going to Pennies, but women today had miscarriages alone, had their first scans alone. How does that make sense? Liz, what do you think? I know, like, you're on call. Did you check your phone? You don't have to go to a birth?
Yeah.
Okay.
No, I'm looking at the phone, so nothing yet. I think for me, and this is an ongoing problem. This is a pre-COVID issue as well, and there are two major issues for me. Number one, Ireland is no country for pregnant women. It is not, maternity is not up there. It's not a priority. And we see that over and over again. We've had the National Maternity Strategy out for how many years now?
Yeah.
And I've seen
I was on it. I was on it. We sat there, we talked, we had plans, and then what happened to it?
Home birth was coming in everywhere. We were going to have birthing units, and this was, we were told this will absolutely definitely happen. 18 months later, there's a moratorium put on again for taking on new midwives, and we've seen nothing. Now, I do understand COVID has been a huge issue, but the other problem I have,
don't they say that a lot of their staff is now vaccinated?
Exactly, and it's the illogic, and this is my issue a lot with maternity care in Ireland, and it's very relevant to the pandemic as well. It's the logic of the system, and I don't understand how a few months ago we were having people going to the pub and able to take off their masks in the pub and drink and eat in a pub with however many other people, but we couldn't allow partners in to support women in labour. And at the same time, I believe there was a tweet on the HSE page to say that two people who lived in the same house had the same risk, and therefore they could go into hospital together, but that didn't seem to apply to maternity. So around that time, my child was very sick, only just turned 18, but was an adult. We went to A&E, and I was allowed to go in and sit with my child for the duration of, I think we were there for 20 hours. And the whole time I was thinking, this is crazy. If my child was pregnant,
can you explain for a second to our audience that don't understand for a second about the maternity hospitals? Because they're not in direct under the HSE, like, right? They're all private, or how do you call it? There is a word for it.
So a lot of them are kind of privately funded, so they still come under the HSE, but they're not owned by the HSE.
So they
and that means
pick and choose what they like from the HSE. What does that give them?
Theoretically, it means that each hospital, although they're working under a hospital group, have the right to make their own decisions about what happens in their hospital, which, you know, can be a really good thing. But it does mean, and I've seen it in relation to, let's say, the policy around having a vaginal birth after 2 previous sections. The HSE policy is that women should be supported in that, and yet very few hospitals actually support that. Some do, some don't. And this is rife through the HSE. The hospitals are quite frequently doing very, very different things depending on which hospital you go to and which doctor you go to within that hospital, or whether you choose to go to a midwife-led clinic. And we've seen this with the pandemic. We have some hospitals that are allowing partners to come in for the last 20 minutes of the labour. I'm not exactly sure how you predict that. I've been in midwifery for 15 years now, and I couldn't tell you when it's just exactly
the last
20 minutes until
yeah.
it's going to be born.
Yeah.
And other hospitals have been saying as soon as you're on labour ward, the partner can come in. It seems it's very
Some
different.
hospitals are less dangerous than others.
Seems to be. And I do understand when staff weren't vaccinated, HSE staff were one of the highest populations for positive COVID tests. And of course, we did have HSE staff in ICU and deaths, and that was very frightening. But now we're living in a world where we're vaccinated. Or at least all HSE staff will have had the option to be vaccinated. And although COVID is still transmittable by people who are vaccinated, and you can still get COVID if you're vaccinated, the chances of you ending up having a serious illness, going to ICU or dying are incredibly minimized now. So it's time, and the HSE are saying it's time, and the chief medical officer is saying it's time to roll back these restrictions and begin.
But you know, is that really the chief medical officer's thing to say? Should it not be the Minister of Health?
I think it should be coming from all levels. And I do think one of the issues we're seeing, it's midwives that are having to ask partners to leave, but it's not necessarily midwives that want to ask partners to leave. So it's got to come from all levels, from government, political levels. It's got to come from managers of the health areas, hospital management within each hospital at every single level. And the scope of practice as a midwife very, very clearly says in it that the woman is the centre of the care. The woman's voice should be the loudest. And I have said over and over again, Leemore, you've heard me say it, birth is a consumer-led industry. So the protest has to come from the consumer. From families, from women and from families. And I think that's what we saw today with the protest, what we've seen from this excellent Facebook page, In Her Shoes, COVID Pregnancy, which has been devastating on a daily basis to read, but so important, as was the In Her Shoes for repeal. Really, really important for people to get their experiences out there.
To process them and heal from them.
People are taking to the streets with that fantastic letter that was funded with the petition. I think for a while we accepted that COVID was very, very frightening and that we did have to protect our HSE staff. And although it was never fair and it wasn't good enough, people did accept that there were reasons, and although it wasn't a good experience for people, we understood it. We were talking about saving lives. Now we're moving into a phase where a fifth of the population now have at least had their first vaccine. HSE healthcare providers, most of them have had both of their vaccines. The cohort 4 people are vaccinated now.
Like, you see, like, even leave the vaccines outside. you see, the supermarkets have never been closed, and people work in the supermarket. The same people work under the same roof, and they're okay. So if I sit with somebody that works with me in the same room for so long, obviously I should be able to have my partner next to me when I give birth, right? Dave, I want to ask you.
When we're hearing the news that come out of Britain today, where people are allowed to hug again, and you're thinking, well, hang on, you know, people in Britain can be hugging each other, but we can't have partners in for maternity.
But apparently you can fly to Britain and back into Ireland, not an issue. So you can go and hug Brits, but just don't hug each other here.
You can hug me, Leemore.
Yeah, I can hug you. Me. Absolutely, yeah. Dave, I want to ask you, so are you planning, do you have a strategy yourself? Like, how do you see the next few months, or how are you preparing the dads for the ups and downs, like this unsurety time that we're in now?
I'm just thinking of hugging there, the old days when we took hugging for granted.
I know.
I suppose, yeah, look, for me, I don't think we're going to scratch the surface on this, and we're not going to see. I think there's going to be massive issues with birth, you know, traumas, and there's going to be massive issues with postnatal depressions as a result of this, because one of the things that you hear with the dads that we are linking in with is that in the normal circumstances of a pregnancy, you're there throughout and you're able to prepare and you're able to build up to the actual birth. And what's happening now is, in a lot of cases, it's literally 20 minutes. You're flying in the door and your child is nearly there, and you don't even have time to adjust into that. And it is a lot of issue around trauma, and it's, you know, it's some of the stories are heartbreaking to listen to, of just, you know, not being prepared for that, and how hard it is to see your partner just in that last space. Yeah. So I suppose, to answer your question as well, we have a midwife that links in with us, that we're able to link the dads into, and we're able to talk through all these different scenarios. We're able to talk about eventualities, what could, what couldn't, and we're able to have that huge discussion. For me, I think the bit it needs to be really looked at is we do have a postnatal piece as well, that dads, and look, you know how passionate I am about this space, and you know how passionate I am about the importance of dads being there throughout the whole birth and the process and the build up, and that's all being taken away. So now we're really trying to mop up the after of how we support dads through at the postnatal piece as well, and making sure that there's enough services for them to link into if they are struggling, and there isn't. And that is the truth, and that's what we have to look at now, is how do we best support both parents in this situation in the future, because it's unprecedented. Yeah.
Plus, Orla, I know that we were talking about it before, is that even if they open tonight, let's imagine, wouldn't that be amazing, that Stephen Donnelly will come out because he saw this show and he said, you know what, they made sense, let's open it up, let's do it. But we still have the last 14 months to work with these people for the next, I don't know how long, because a lot of them are with post-trauma for many different reasons. So Orla, I'm going to come to you, and we're going to say goodbye to each and you slowly but surely. So just the last, like, how do you want to close it? Or like, do we have plans for postnatal or post-trauma, or what are we going to do?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things. One is we're going to keep campaigning until these restrictions are fully lifted. Yeah. I think you're right. There are huge issues there in terms of mental health. We're already seeing them. And we need to see the supports being there for women coming out of this. And I would just like to finish on a final point, because I think Liz raised some really important, and yourself, Leemore, in terms of bigger issues. We're also on the brink of doing massive state investment on a new national maternity hospital. And from our point of view in the Women's Council, that needs to be in state ownership. And the way it's currently going is it probably won't. So I think, in order to really have control of our maternity hospitals and our maternity services, we do need to have a national state maternity hospital. So I also think that that's an important part of future campaigning as well. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Orla. Liz, do you have anything to say to close? Are you still here? You are.
I am, sorry. I think I just want to bring back some of the stuff that Dave's been saying, mental health issues for
Partners.
pregnant people, partners, families across
Families.
the board.
I think it's more than women. I really think it's families. Absolutely.
I look after families.
Yeah.
And that's what I do in my role. I'm very lucky, and I'm seeing Dave mentioned disconnect, feelings of guilt. We already know from research that men do suffer from postnatal depression. We are not good around mental health services in Ireland anyway. We're not good around postnatal depression for women, and we are certainly not good around postnatal depression for men. And we have to now accept post-COVID that we've got to invest in mental health services for everybody who's been affected through maternity issues and through lockdown. We've got massive issues
And
with the
business
teenage
losses
population.
and absolutely. Absolutely.
So I think we really need to be investing in mental health support going forward.
Thank you. And Dave, the last word for you.
I mean, look, just to mirror what Liz and Orla said, I mean, unfortunately, we're now having conversations when I never envisioned when we started this about postnatal depression. One in dads do suffer, about birth trauma. So we're having these dark discussions that need to happen in what is, a very joyful time. But mental health for me, we've no idea how this is going to pan out. So we don't have enough supports, and it's something we hugely need to look at, and that they can link in and that they're easily accessible, and there's not like a 9-month waiting list for people to access these services. And to know the signs and the symptoms and to be able to get the right supports is key for me going forward, and to keep this campaign going because it's vitally important.
Yeah. Guys, thank you so much for sharing this evening with me. And thank you, all the people that watched us. I just would like to remind you all that this is a voluntary program. And if any of you can help and donate, go to our website. That would be amazing. And I'm hoping that even though it was a tough program to listen to, we're going to give you some hope, because we're not letting go. And we're there. We have a plan for the future, and we want to support each other. Thank you, everyone. Good night.